Well, guys, this is it. After all these months of waiting, because this is the main reason why it took so long for PFA's 2017 season to start. Here is the 2017 PFA season schedule release show, as they always call it, release show for the NFL. Yep, this took forever. I mean, this is the reason why PFA has not been doing any games since like late August, early September, because I've tried to make the schedule myself, but as always, ever since I first started to try to make my own schedules for my own other leagues back in 2010, it never goes where I want. I would make a schedule just fine until near the last couple weeks where, oh, this team can only play this team this week, but that team can only play this team that week, and you get what I'm saying. Like, I need that program that the NFL uses to add constraints and actually calculate the opponents and stuff, but, of course, good luck getting that. So, anyways, I decided to let the game make the schedule for me, and been like this for like a month or so. I just have not gotten around to doing it because I had to take care of other things first before I do the schedule release show. So here it is, and of course I also have the schedule already somewhat set for the playoffs and stuff. But of course the opponents, we have no idea what, as they haven't even started the season yet, so it's gonna take a while for that. So let's get this underway by finally removing all this stuff to finally reveal Week 1, and of course. It's on the August 20th to 21st. It's not. There we go. So, the matchups for Week 1 for August 20th to 21st. It'd be San Antonio at Atlanta. Cincinnati at Baltimore, which is a game I wanted for Week 1. I managed to get San Diego at Birmingham. That's going to be interesting. The two division winners from last year's National Conference. Cleveland going to Boston. Then Columbus going to Detroit. Miami going to Houston. That was another game I wanted too, and I was lucky enough to get. And then Washington going to Manhattan, too. That's funny because they went against their Week 1 last year as well. Hawaii going to Milwaukee. Louisville going to Orlando. Jacksonville going to Tampa. And then we get to the 4 p.m. games. Oh, boy. This is going to be great. Minneapolis going to Chicago, the arch rivals in the league. This is probably like the Ravens-Steelers rivalry of PFA. It's huge. And they're going to go up against her on Week 1. Kansas City going to Denver. That'll be interesting. And then, of course, Oakland going to Los Angeles. Remember, since that the Oakland Majors trade for Ruben Williams from San Francisco, that's going to be a very important game to see how well he's going to do. And then Omaha, the defending champion, on the road to start the year as a defending champion, going up against the team that gave them their first loss last year. After, remember, they started 14-0, the New Orleans Jets, so that's going to be interesting to see. And another game I was lucky enough. Matter of fact, these 2 straight games right here, I was able to get one from 1 p.m. I mean, for Week 1, I was able to get. Portland going to Phoenix, and Buffalo going to Pittsburgh, and then finally El Paso going to Seattle. And then we get to the Sunday night game, Las Vegas going to San Francisco, and then we get to the Monday night game, the second year in a row that Dallas hosted the first Monday night game of the year. Last year was Pittsburgh, this year it's Philadelphia. Kind of like my throat feels funny for some reason. I probably need a drink, so it's kind of difficult to talk now. So anyways, that was Week 1. And now, here we go into Week 2. As I'm trying to get, like, centered. Here we go. Alright, that's all the games for Week 2, which is from August 27th to 28th. It'd be Baltimore going to Buffalo to start the 1 p.m. games, which is another game I wanted for Week 2, and I managed to get that. El Paso going to Columbus. Minneapolis going to Detroit. Atlanta going to Indianapolis. Seattle going to Jacksonville. Denver going to Louisville. That was a game I won for Week 1. Oakland going to Manhattan. Cincinnati going to Milwaukee. Chicago going to New Orleans. Dallas going to Orlando. Birmingham going to Tampa. And then finally Los Angeles going to Washington. As we get to the 4 p.m. games, which we get a rematch from last week's Sunday night with San Francisco going to Las Vegas, Pittsburgh going to Omaha, a possible could-have-been matchup in the PFA Bowl last year if Pittsburgh beat Chicago in the Century Conference Championship. Then Philadelphia going to Boston, Cleveland going to San Diego, and San Antonio going to Phoenix, and then we get to the Sunday night game. Kansas City at Miami. That would be interesting, since you remember both these teams were terrible at the start of 2016, and they turned it around dramatically. Just Miami was lucky enough to make the playoffs still, as Kansas City had to stay out. And then we get to the Monday night game. Hawaii going to Oklahoma, who's going to make their debut. Since remember, and I think Indianapolis got their bye week, one of their 2 bye weeks to start the year off. So that's going to be interesting to see on Monday night, because Oklahoma has one hell of an offense, and Hawaii can have an offense too. They're just inconsistent. All right, let me go right back. I need a drink badly. Much better. Alright, so then that was week 2, as we now go into week 3, which is of September 3rd to September 4th, with Portland going to Atlanta, and then in Los Angeles going to Birmingham. That'll be the matches between the two, another 2 matches between division winners from the National Conference last year. Pittsburgh going to Buffalo, Seattle going to Kansas City, Milwaukee going to Cleveland, Tampa going to Columbus, New Orleans going to Dallas, a matchup between 2 teams that fought for the Century South last year, Orlando going to Detroit, Oklahoma going to Houston, and then Washington going to Omaha. It's a rematch from the National Conference Championship last year. And remember, it was #1 offense in Omaha against the #1 defense in Washington, and Omaha shut them out 17-0. We'll see what happens in this rematch. And then the final 1 p.m. game, Boston going to San Antonio. And then we get to the 4 p.m. games with Phoenix going to Hawaii, San Diego going to Las Vegas, Philadelphia going to Manhattan, because remember, that game went right down to the wire, and Philadelphia had to make a huge comeback too, because both those teams had offensive shootouts. Louisville going to Oakland, and Kansas City going to San Francisco. And then we get to the Sunday night game, a game from last year Sunday night as well. Denver at Indianapolis, because remember, Denver was up 23-10 going into the 4th quarter, and Indianapolis pulled off a 1-point comeback, 24-23. That's gonna be interesting. And then probably one of the most anticipated early Monday night games to start the year, Baltimore at Miami. A matchup between the 2 wildcard teams in the Century Conference. Oh boy, because these 2 teams, along with Pittsburgh, are one of the contenders to win the Century Conference title this year. So this is going to be interesting as hell to see what happens in this game. I can't wait for that. So then we go down to the week 4 games of September 10th through 11th. And first up would be Pittsburgh going to New Orleans, Seattle going to Oklahoma, Detroit going to Orlando, Washington going to Philadelphia, Manhattan at Tampa, Kansas City at Baltimore. That's going to be interesting. Atlanta at Birmingham, Minneapolis at Buffalo, Cincinnati at Houston, and Milwaukee at Louisville. And then the 4 p.m. games, San Antonio going to Denver, Jacksonville going to Hawaii, Phoenix going to Oakland, Dallas going to Portland, Chicago going to San Diego, and El Paso going to San Francisco. And then we get to the 4 p.m. game, Sunday night game, Los Angeles at Omaha, and a rematch from the divisional round playoff game last year, because remember, that went right back and forth until the very end. And of course, this game is one of 2 games that Omaha is not going to play in their normal stadium, TD Ameritrade Park, Omaha. They're playing, I think it's called Memorial Stadium. It's a stadium where I think the Cornhuskers of college football play at. And it's like 100 miles away or something like that from Omaha. It's an 80,000 seat stadium, and this is going to be one of the 2 games that Omaha's going to play there, and it's going to be on Sunday night hosted Los Angeles. Oh boy, Los Angeles, expect a lot louder crowd for that game. And then we get to the Monday night game, Boston at Cleveland. And now, week 5, and this is the week where a whole bunch of teams had their bye week, so it shrinks dramatically. It's the week of September 17th through 18th. The 1 p.m. games, Detroit at Columbus, Milwaukee at Jacksonville, Houston at Orlando, and Cincinnati at Pittsburgh. With the 4 p.m. games, Buffalo at Baltimore, Portland at Indianapolis, and Denver going to Omaha. That's going to be big since Denver almost beat Omaha twice last year until Omaha just pulled it out at the very end. And in the Sunday night game, Minneapolis at Kansas City, 2 defenses are going to go at. That's going to be incredible. And in the Monday night game, a rematch from another Monday night game near the end of last year, El Paso going to Las Vegas, and another division showdown. That's going to be fun. Then we get to week 6, the week of September 24th to 25th. Baltimore going to Boston, Hawaii going to Cincinnati, Philadelphia going to Cleveland, San Antonio going to Jacksonville, Manhattan going to Louisville, Houston going to New Orleans, Detroit going to Oklahoma, Columbus going to Orlando, Atlanta going to Tampa, and then Birmingham going to Washington in a rematch from their division round matchup last year. Because remember, they have the 2 best defenses last year, and ended up Washington blowing out Birmingham 24-10. Can't wait to see what's going to happen there. Then we get to the 4 p.m. games. Indianapolis going to Denver, San Francisco going to El Paso, Las Vegas going to Minneapolis, Portland going to Oakland, and then we get to the Century Conference rematch, although it's at a different spot this time. Chicago at Pittsburgh. That's going to be interesting to see what Pittsburgh's got for the rematch from Chicago losing to the Century Conference title. And Omaha going to San Diego. And then Milwaukee going to Seattle. Then we get to the Sunday night game. Dallas at Miami. This is important because these two are like huge rivals, just like there's a rivalry between them and New Orleans as well. Because remember, Dallas and Miami would up against each other the final week of the season to determine the last wild card spot, and it was in Miami too. And Miami ended up pulling off the victory to secure the last spot just barely. And then the Monday night game, a rematch from the first playoff game in PFA history, and it's a rematch from their wild card game last year, as Phoenix will return to Los Angeles for the first time since that loss on Monday night. So now I need another drink again too. No idea why my throat's all fucked up today. Alright, so week 6 now in the books. As we now go to week 7, the week of October 1st through 2nd, as the games are Jacksonville going to Atlanta, Tampa going to Birmingham, Boston going to Philadelphia going to Boston, Dallas going to Buffalo, Baltimore going to Columbus, Cleveland going to Houston, Louisville going to Indianapolis, Orlando going to Miami, and Detroit at Minneapolis. And we get to the 4 p.m. games. Manhattan at El Paso, Oakland at Hawaii, San Antonio at Kansas City, Omaha going to Los Angeles after their matchup from just a couple weeks ago, and then Oklahoma going to Milwaukee, San Diego going to New Orleans, a matchup between the 2 division winners that were in the wild card round last year that were terrible pretty much compared to everyone else. We're going to see how well they handle each other. Phoenix going to Portland, Cincinnati going to Seattle. Then we get to the Sunday night game, Chicago at Washington, a matchup between the Century Conference champion against the team that almost won the National Conference game. That's going to be interesting. And then, of course, another very interesting Monday night game, Denver going to San Francisco. That's going to be sick. Man, my throat still doesn't feel right. As we get to week 8, the week of September 8th through the 9th, as it is Phoenix going to Baltimore. That's going to be big. Columbus going to Cincinnati, Orlando going to Dallas, Chicago going to Detroit, Buffalo going to Indianapolis, Houston at Jacksonville, Omaha at Louisville, Cleveland at Milwaukee, Kansas City at Minneapolis, Denver at San Antonio, and then El Paso at Tampa. Then the 4 p.m. games, Los Angeles at Hawaii at Los Angeles, I mean. Manhattan at Oakland, Las Vegas at Portland, Pittsburgh at San Diego. That's going to be interesting because those two went against each other 3 times last year, including the playoffs. This is their first rematch since the divisional round. We'll see what happens there. Boston at San Francisco, Oklahoma at Seattle, and then Philadelphia at Washington. Then we get to the Sunday night game. Birmingham at Atlanta, two division rivals with Birmingham. They have the number 2 defense in Atlanta for a long time, remember, because they were not a good team on paper last year, and they stormed to a 6-0 start and managed to finish 9-9 because they had a very strong offense, although it sputtered out near the end. That's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen. And then we get to the Monday night game. Arch rivals showdown in the Century South as New Orleans visits Miami. That's going to be sick, although, because New Orleans, although they were not good, especially compared to Miami, Miami was a much better team than them. New Orleans gave them like their second to last loss in Miami, 14-13, so that'll be interesting to see. Again, as we now go to Week 9, the week of October 15th through the 16th, as it is for 1 p.m. games. Tampa at Atlanta, Miami going to Baltimore, that's going to be great. Denver at Boston, New Orleans at Houston, Omaha at Indianapolis, Phoenix at Kansas City, Columbus at Louisville, Buffalo at Philadelphia. Then the 4 p.m. games. Pittsburgh at Cincinnati. Orlando at El Paso. Milwaukee at Hawaii. Dallas at Las Vegas. Birmingham at Los Angeles. Oakland at Portland. San Diego at San Francisco. That's going to be big because they fought hard last year for the Century West. Cleveland going to Seattle. And Manhattan going to Washington. And then Sunday night is going to be an offensive juggernaut. Jacksonville making their first Sunday night ever appearance against Oklahoma. 2 of the best offenses in the league, but they have such a terrible defense. Both these teams might get 40+ points, maybe even push 50 each. That'll be interesting. And then the Monday night game between the arch rivals finally. Chicago going to Minneapolis. Since last year's game in Chicago, they went back and forth. They even went to overtime too. So that's going to be interesting. Although, when it was at Minneapolis, they pretty fucked up Chicago badly. But I figured this time around, it would be nice to switch it around, have it go to Minneapolis instead of Chicago again. As we're now getting to halfway point now, as we get to Week 10, October 22nd to the 23rd, as it is Indianapolis going to Atlanta, San Antonio going to Baltimore, Jacksonville at Cincinnati, Manhattan at Cleveland, Orlando at Columbus, Oakland at Detroit, San Francisco at Kansas City, Denver at Milwaukee, Buffalo at Minneapolis, and Chicago at Oklahoma. Then the 4 p.m. games, Seattle going to El Paso, Philadelphia going to Las Vegas, Portland going to Los Angeles, Miami going to Phoenix, a rematch from last year too. That was a defensive struggle. Birmingham at Pittsburgh. That will be interesting to see how Pittsburgh handles a really strong defense coming into their town. And New Orleans going to San Diego. And a matchup between 2 of the worst teams, well, not 2 of the worst teams in the league, Louisville going to Tampa, because remember, these two had the last 2 losing records in the league. New Orleans was 0-13, Tampa was 0-14, which is the longest streak in the league for losing. That'll be interesting to see what happens. And then we get to Week 10, a flip from last year's Sunday night game, Houston at Dallas, because remember, it was at Houston last year, and Houston held on to beat Dallas in an upset in a defensive struggle. We'll see what happens here. And then we get to the very interesting Monday night game, Washington at Boston, because remember, early on this season, these two went against each other with the division title, National East, on the line, and Boston had a 21-3 lead, I believe, going into the 3rd quarter, and they ended up blowing it 24-21. So that'll be interesting to see if Boston can make up for that terrible, disappointing loss last year. As we now get halfway mark now, we've passed halfway mark, as we're now going to Week 11, the week of October 29th to 30th. As first up would be Las Vegas at Atlanta, Cincinnati at Buffalo, Kansas City at Detroit, Hawaii at Kansas City, Jacksonville, Boston at Miami, Washington at New Orleans, Houston at Oklahoma, Phoenix at San Antonio, and Oakland at Tampa. As we get to the 4 p.m. games, Louisville at El Paso, San Diego at Los Angeles. That'll be very interesting. Dallas at Minneapolis, which is kind of surprising I would have that picked for 4 p.m. games, especially since Dallas not only swept Minneapolis last year. They destroyed them in Minneapolis like 45-6 or something like that. But I figured maybe this time around it'll be a little bit better for them. Milwaukee going to Omaha, which is, of course, that was going to be one of the Sunday night games, but unfortunately I couldn't do it this week because the Sunday night game was much more important. And then Indianapolis going to Portland. Then we get to Sunday night, the rematch, the actual rematch of the Century Conference title last year. Pittsburgh at Chicago. Now, Chicago, like I said, is going to Pittsburgh earlier on in the year, but this is the actual rematch, an exact replica of the Century Conference title last year. So we'll see what happens there. Maybe Chicago get fucked up so badly by Pittsburgh, maybe they'll get revenge in this game. That'll be interesting. And then Monday night, Cleveland going to Manhattan. Remember, Manhattan swept Cleveland last year in upsets, including when they hosted them in MetLife, where they went down the wire and pulled off a last-second comeback to win the game. So that'll be interesting if that happens again, as we now go into Week 12, the week of November 5th through the 6th, as it is Manhattan going to Boston, Cincinnati going to Columbus, Buffalo at Dallas, Oklahoma at Detroit, Minneapolis at Indianapolis, Atlanta at Jacksonville, Chicago at Kansas City, Louisville at Milwaukee, and New Orleans at Orlando. Then we get to the 4 p.m. games. Washington going to Birmingham. The two defenses are going to go out. That's going to be sick. Las Vegas at El Paso. Cleveland at Hawaii. Houston at Miami. San Francisco at Phoenix. Philadelphia at Portland. San Diego at Seattle, and San Antonio at Tampa. And then we get to the Sunday night game, a game that I won on Monday night, but I could not do it. Omaha going to Denver. That's going to be sick because, like I said, these two teams went up against each other twice because of their division rivals, and Denver almost beat Omaha twice. They almost pulled it off. So it'll be interesting to see what's going to happen this year. And then, oh boy, big showdown Monday night. The Century East on the line probably this time. Pittsburgh at Baltimore. A rematch from last year's Monday night when it was in Pittsburgh, remember. And both teams, honestly, when they host each other, they spanked each other pretty good. Baltimore fucked up Pittsburgh pretty good, 21-10 in their game last November. So it'll be interesting to see what happens this time around. As remember, they both were 13-5, but Pittsburgh won the division because of a better division record compared to Baltimore. So that'll be interesting to see what happens for that game. As we now get to Week 13, the week of November 12th to the 13th. As you can see, we have so many games on here that the thing can't even fit up here anymore. Omaha going to Birmingham, a match the first time they ever gone up against each other since they didn't go up against each other last year. Phoenix at Boston, Las Vegas at Buffalo, Baltimore at Cincinnati, Washington at Cleveland, Tampa at Detroit, Dallas at Houston, Philadelphia at Indianapolis. Remember, Philadelphia beat Indianapolis 35-7 when they went there with 4 touchdowns. It was ridiculous. Miami at Kansas City, Jacksonville at Milwaukee, Portland at Minneapolis, and Atlanta at San Antonio. Then we get to the 4 p.m. games. Louisville at Denver, Columbus at El Paso, New Orleans at Jacksonville, Hawaii at Oakland, and San Francisco at Seattle. And then we get to the Sunday night game, a rematch from the divisional round last year, San Diego at Pittsburgh. That will be very, very, very interesting to see how those two go against each other in a rematch. And of course, for the Monday night game, Oklahoma at Chicago. Like most rounded team in the league at Chicago, going up against one hell of an offense but a terrible defense in Oklahoma. That's going to be very interesting to see. As we now get to Week 14, the week of November 19th through 20th. As a whole bunch of teams had their byes this week. As it'll be Detroit going to Chicago, Cincinnati going to Cleveland, Columbus going to Manhattan, Indianapolis going to Milwaukee, Los Angeles going to Pittsburgh, Tampa going to San Antonio, and Boston at Washington. Then we get to the 4 p.m. games. That's going to be big. Miami going to Dallas. And then San Diego going to El Paso. Only this is a little bit different because this is going to be one of a couple games every year for the next couple years that El Paso is going to have one home game each year in Mexico City, just like the Raiders are doing, and this is going to be the game they play in Mexico City as they host San Diego. That's going to be interesting to see. And then Seattle going to Las Vegas, Orlando going to Oakland, Minneapolis going to Oklahoma. That'll be interesting. A strong defense against a strong offense. Atlanta at Philadelphia, and then Hawaii at Portland. Then we get to the Sunday night. Oh boy, it's going to be big. Baltimore at San Francisco. That's going to be sick. And then the Monday night game, a matchup between the #1 offensive league against the #2 defense. Birmingham at Omaha. That's going to be sick. Man, my throat's still killing me. As we're now getting down to the stretch, as we get down to week 15, the week of November 26th to the 27th, as it's still going down. Jeez, that's ridiculous. Here we go. Finally. All right, 1 p.m. games. Atlanta at Buffalo. Los Angeles at Chicago. Oklahoma at Cleveland. Minneapolis at Dallas. Milwaukee at Indianapolis. Tampa at Jacksonville. Baltimore at Kansas City. Detroit at Manhattan. Orlando at New Orleans. Louisville at Omaha. Portland at Philadelphia, and Columbus at Pittsburgh. As we get to the 4 p.m. games, San Antonio at Birmingham. Division rivals, offense and defense meet. Boston at Denver. Oakland at Phoenix. El Paso going to San Diego after their matchup in Mexico City, and then Las Vegas at Seattle. And then we get to the Sunday night game. It's San Francisco again. This time hosting Miami, the team that edged them out in the last playoff spot. So that's going to be very interesting to see how well they do. And then a very interesting Monday night game. Houston at Hawaii. Two teams that are okay, I guess, but both teams have somehow managed to get a 9-9 record last year. Because remember, Houston many times in the year had gone like multiple games back from losing compared to winning. They were 2-6, 5-8, and stuff like that. So the fact that these two teams managed to get 9-9 is going to be interesting to see how well they do this year. As we now get to week 16, the week of December 3rd to December 4th. And here we go, as it's going to be Columbus at Baltimore, Kansas City at Boston, Portland at Buffalo, Houston at Cincinnati, El Paso at Detroit, Birmingham at Jacksonville, Oakland at Louisville, Oklahoma at Minneapolis, Manhattan at Orlando, Cleveland at Philadelphia, San Francisco at San Diego. Then the 4 p.m. games, Seattle at Hawaii, Indianapolis at Las Vegas, Denver going to Miami. That's going to be interesting. Los Angeles going to Phoenix, New Orleans going to Pittsburgh. That'll be interesting. And a rematch from the last week of the season last year, Washington going to San Diego. We'll see how badly Washington will fuck San Diego up next year. And, of course, the most anticipated game of all the season, the rematch of the PFA Bowl 1, Chicago going to Omaha. That's going to be sick, and that's the second game. That's going to be in Memorial Stadium, I think it's called. So, wow. Chicago going to have to not only play the team that beat them 35-9 in PFA Bowl 1, but going to have to go to a much, much bigger crowd in Memorial Stadium. That's going to be devastating for them. And almost right around the same time I won this. I won this a very late game in the season. I won it normally week 18, but I managed to get week 16, so I got really lucky right there. And then the anticipated Monday night game, too. Dallas at Atlanta. Since remember, those two went against each other with undefeated records at the line when everyone thought Atlanta was surprised and managed to end up winning 27-16 or something like that. As we're now down to the final 4 weeks as we get to week 17, the week of December 10th through 11th, with Birmingham going to Chicago, Oakland going to Columbus, Milwaukee going to Houston, Louisville going to Manhattan, Kansas City at Oklahoma, Indianapolis at Philadelphia, Jacksonville at San Antonio, and Orlando at Tampa. And we get to the 4 p.m. games. Phoenix at Denver, Detroit at El Paso, Los Angeles at Hawaii, Buffalo at Las Vegas, San Francisco at Miami, that'll be big. Baltimore at Pittsburgh, that of course is going to be big. Seattle at San Diego, and then Cleveland at Washington. Then we get to the 4 p.m. The Sunday night game. Offensive shootout possibly. Atlanta at Portland, because these two had explosive offense last year, and they soared to an unbelievable start. Atlanta started off 6-0, even though they were the worst team in the league. Portland started 7-0. And, of course, Atlanta crapped the bed the rest of the way to finish 9-9. Portland, actually, the last week last year was 10-7. They had a shot to clinch the playoff spot if they beat Denver, only to lose and miss the playoffs. And, of course, the Monday night game, Dallas at New Orleans, a matchup between the two teams that fought for the division title last year in the Century East. And now, of course, this actually kind of goes against the rules of scheduling for PFA, since the team can have up to 5 primetime games, but it can only, at the maximum possible, could be only 3 Sunday night games and 2 Monday night games. Dallas has now 3 Monday night games, hosting Philadelphia, at Atlanta, and at New Orleans. So although they're breaking the rules, I can't fix it. I need to have Atlanta and New Orleans on the Monday night, and Philadelphia was like the only game that was good for Monday night. So although it's against the rules, Dallas is going to have 3 Monday night games this year instead of 12. I mean 2. So as we're now going to week 18, the week of December 17th through the 18th, as, come on, go down. There we go. As it's Buffalo going to Cincinnati, Jacksonville going to Cleveland, Pittsburgh going to Columbus, Las Vegas going to Dallas, Orlando going to Houston, Oklahoma going to Kansas City, Louisville going to Detroit, Boston going to Manhattan, Indianapolis going to Omaha, and Miami at San Antonio. And we get to the 4 p.m. games. New Orleans at Birmingham, Washington at Los Angeles, Tampa at Oakland, Hawaii at Phoenix, and Seattle at San Francisco as we get to the next very interesting Sunday night game. Baltimore going to Denver, a matchup between the two wildcard teams last year. That's going to be sick. And we get to the Monday night game. Minneapolis at Philadelphia. The really strong defense in Minneapolis going to Philadelphia, a very strong offense. That's going to be sick. As we're now getting down to the final 2 weeks of the season, the week of week 19, the week of December 24th to 25th, so Christmas Eve and Christmas, which is funny because this is where the season ended last year in the regular season, but this is where it's going to end now in the playoffs. I mean, this year, so that means next week's going to be the longest week in PFA history, as it'll be San Francisco going to Baltimore, Columbus going to Buffalo, Kansas City going to Chicago, Cleveland going to Jacksonville, Tampa going to Louisville, Miami going to New Orleans. That'll be interesting. Seattle going, Cincinnati going to Oklahoma, El Paso going to Orlando, and then Birmingham going to San Antonio. I don't know why I'm getting my name screwed up all of a sudden recently. Then the 4 p.m. games: Indianapolis at Dallas, Milwaukee at Denver, Portland at Hawaii, Atlanta at Minneapolis, Denver at Phoenix, Las Vegas at San Diego, Houston at Seattle, and then Omaha going to Washington. We'll see how Omaha could do against the #1 defense when they go to their place. And then Sunday night game, Manhattan going to Philadelphia. This matchup, remember, like I said, these were offensive shootouts, so that's going to be interesting to see. And then on Christmas Day, it's going to be Monday night, Los Angeles at Oakland, which I was not planned, but I figured with Ruben Williams now being on Oakland, that'll be interesting to see how well they handle at the end of the year. So this could be a good opportunity for Oakland to show that they're good enough to contend, or who knows, maybe they'll be shit in the bed at this point, and maybe Ruben Williams will be benched at this point. We'll have to wait and see when that happens. And then the final week of the year, with Baltimore and Dallas having their bye weeks to not play this week. Of course, not showing the whole thing. Gonna have to zoom out, even though it should have been earlier. If you could see up here, for week 20th, the week of December 31st to January 1st. So this week, last Monday night game's gonna be on 2018. How about that? So Philadelphia at Atlanta, Jacksonville at Birmingham, San Antonio at Boston, New Orleans at Chicago, Oklahoma at Cincinnati, Hawaii at Cleveland, Buffalo at Columbus, Seattle at Houston, Detroit at Kansas City, Indianapolis at Louisville, Tampa at Manhattan, Omaha at Milwaukee, and Miami at Orlando. Then we get to the 4 p.m. games with Minneapolis visiting Las Vegas, El Paso going to Oakland, Denver going to Phoenix, and then the last 4 p.m. game, Los Angeles at Portland, which is going to be interesting because Portland has decided 1 game a year, because remember, they now have an alternate uniform, and they're going to wear that 1 game a year at home, and this is going to be it, the final game of the year. They're going to wear their alternate uniforms against Los Angeles, because remember, that game went down to the wire 41-39, so that's going to be interesting. Matter of fact, I think that was the high-scoring game in PFA history, which we'll see how they do in this rematch. And then we get to the Sunday night game, the matchup between the two teams that were runner-ups in their conference titles. Pittsburgh going to Washington. That's gonna be sick since they went against each other last year. Pittsburgh fucked up Washington pretty good, so we'll see how well they do. And then the last game of the year on New Year's Day, with the Century East possibly on the, Century West on the line, San Francisco going to San Diego. Because remember, these two went against each other the second to last week last year. Both of them were, I think, were 11-5, and whoever won pretty much won the division. And San Francisco, when they visited San Diego, had a 23-10 lead going into the fourth quarter. And just like Denver did to Indianapolis last year, San Francisco blew it, as San Diego would go on to win 24-23. So that's going to be sick to see that as the final game to finish off the year for the regular season. But we're not done yet. That's all for that's the schedule for the regular season. But now it's time to get to the playoffs. So first off, in the wild card round, the divisions are flipped, because last year the National Conference started. This year it's going to be the Century Conference, with their first wildcard game at 4 p.m. on January 6, 2018. And it's the National Conference at 8 p.m. that night. Then the next day, the National Conference again on 1 p.m. at January 7th. And the Century Conference at 4 p.m. So then, the divisional round would be the National Conference starting off at 4 p.m. January 13th, with the Century Conference at 8 p.m., and then the Century Conference again at 1 p.m. January 14th, with the National Conference finishing off the divisional round at 4 p.m. Then we get to the Conference Championship games. This year with the home team being the Century Conference, and their championship game will be at 3 p.m. January 21st, with the National Conference being the away team. This year's PFA Bowl will be at 6 p.m. And then finally, PFA Bowl 2 at 6:30 p.m. The latest ever PFA Bowl ever so far, on February 4th, 2018. That might be the latest possible start too, I believe, as it'll be in MetLife Stadium in East Rutherford, New Jersey, as we're staying on the East Coast. So Manhattan will host the PFA Bowl 2. Will that be enough to fuel them to possibly run to make it all the way there? We'll have to wait and see. So that's the schedule for the 2017 PFA season. Now it's going to be a while still before the games start filming, because I still got to finish free agency. I got to do the draft. I got to update the rosters and stuff and get the overalls of the teams and stuff. So that's going to be a while still. And of course, now I got to get to work on the site to add this schedule in there. So it will take a while, but at least it's happy to know that the 2017 PFA schedule is set. And once we get all this stuff done, it'll be ready to go. And boy, I can't wait to start the 2017 PFA schedule.